He would later be remembered as a thunderous conqueror whose name echoed across continents, yet the boy known as Temujin first experienced the world as a quiet, watchful place where endless grasslands promised freedom while offering almost no protection or certainty at all. The paradox followed him early because life on the open steppe felt limitless to the eye and imagination, while his own position within it remained fragile, shaped by shifting alliances, unpredictable seasons, and the temperaments of adults beyond his influence. Even in childhood, he sensed that strength and vulnerability were not opposites but companions, moving together through every decision, shaping how one listened carefully, waited strategically, and survived among people who offered smiles easily yet withdrew loyalty without warning. When elders spoke around communal fires with voices steady from repetition, he listened less to heroic claims and more to the pauses between sentences, where fear, pride, resentment, and memory quietly surfaced despite deliberate attempts at confidence. This habit of observation created early distance between him and other children, who chased games, approval, and momentary attention, while he measured expressions, remembered betrayals, and stored impressions patiently for purposes not yet defined. Loss arrived not as a single dramatic rupture, but as a slow erosion of safety. When familiar figures disappeared, resources dwindled, and belonging revealed itself as conditional, teaching him that identity could be withdrawn suddenly and without explanation. During those moments, he felt the ache of not fitting anywhere completely, because shared blood did not guarantee protection, and the vast steppe that once felt generous began to feel distant, indifferent, and quietly unforgiving. Rather than surrendering to isolation, his mind turned inward, shaping questions about fairness, order, and resilience not as childish fantasies of control, but as serious reflections on how stability might be built within unstable worlds. He noticed how groups formed and fractured, how charisma often outweighed kindness, and how rules bent easily under fear, lessons absorbed silently while he stood slightly outside the circle of decision. Hunger sharpened more than his body because it heightened his awareness of power, revealing how control over resources guided choices, alliances, and loyalties, and how generosity could be sincere while still serving quiet strategy. Even then, a subtle humor threaded his thinking, as he recognized the irony of grown men arguing loudly about honor while failing to protect the young who depended on their strength and consistency. Writing did not yet shape his reflections, but memory served that purpose well, arranging events with care, preserving details about who stood firm during hardship and who vanished when commitment required sacrifice. Among crowds, he often felt unseen, which carried a sting, but also granted freedom to observe uninterrupted, allowing him to understand temperament, intention, and fear before words revealed too much. That invisibility brought pain, yet it also provided safety, because attention on the steppe could draw danger as quickly as it invited opportunity, and restraint often meant survival. He learned to read the land as others read faces, sensing where shelter existed, where movement risked exposure, and where patience mattered more than speed or bravado. These habits shaped his inner world, where imagination blended tightly with practicality, and where dreams were examined against harsh reality rather than used as escape from it. He wondered privately why authority appeared inherited instead of earned, and why courage seemed celebrated only after survival proved its usefulness to others. Such questions remained unspoken, circulating quietly as he watched leaders demand loyalty they rarely returned when circumstances shifted. His sensitivity, often mistaken for weakness by those who valued noise over awareness, allowed him to feel subtle changes in mood and intention, preparing him for transitions long before they became visible to others. Trust, he realized early through repeated observation, functioned like a fragile bridge, strong only when maintained deliberately from both sides and easily collapsed through neglect. When that bridge failed, anger flared briefly, but reflection followed close behind, guiding him toward adaptation and caution rather than despair or impulsive retaliation. He practiced restraint daily, learning when silence protected more than protest, and when patience created openings that force or volume never could. Though small in status and security, his awareness expanded steadily, shaped by necessity rather than ambition or comfort. The steppe became his classroom, where weather taught endurance, animals demonstrated hierarchy, and distance demanded foresight and planning. Each passing day added layers to his understanding of survival, not merely as physical endurance, but as social navigation among uncertain loyalties. He sensed that stories defined people as powerfully as actions, and that shaping narrative influenced allegiance and memory alike. This realization lingered, encouraging careful remembrance of events, favoring versions that highlighted fairness, loyalty, and consequence. He noticed how mercy and cruelty both echoed outward, shaping reputations long after moments passed. Rather than rushing toward revenge after betrayal, he studied causes patiently, recognizing patterns repeated across families, clans, and seasons. The persistent feeling of exclusion sharpened his desire for coherence, for systems that rewarded reliability over inheritance and promises over accident. Yet he remained cautious, aware that ideals alone rarely filled empty stomachs or defended exposed camps. His internal dialogue balanced hope with skepticism, preventing him from clinging too tightly to promises or surrendering fully to bitterness. As adolescence approached, responsibility pressed closer, demanding choices with consequences extending beyond personal comfort or immediate survival. He felt the tension between vulnerability and resolve intensify, shaping a temperament that questioned authority while acknowledging its necessity. The boy who once only watched quietly now tested presence carefully, discovering that calm confidence could draw attention without force. He observed how respect shifted when words aligned with action, and how reputation traveled faster than explanation. These insights did not yet suggest empire or conquest, but they assembled fragments of leadership grounded in experience rather than fantasy. He remained aware of uncertainty, understanding that adaptability mattered more than pride or certainty. Moments of warmth still surfaced, particularly when small alliances endured, reminding him that loyalty could exist when carefully maintained. Humor softened hardship at times, appearing as dry observation rather than laughter, helping him endure contradiction without becoming bitter. The world offered no promise of fairness, yet it consistently rewarded awareness, a lesson he absorbed fully. His sense of self grew sturdier, anchored not in lineage but in observation, memory, and restraint. He accepted that belonging might need to be built deliberately rather than inherited passively. That acceptance carried sadness and motivation together, encouraging him to imagine structures capable of surviving pressure. He did not yet know what form those structures would take, only that instability produced suffering. The quiet boy continued watching and learning, attentive to how fear encouraged cruelty and security allowed generosity. Each experience layered upon the last, slowly shaping a worldview attentive to cause, consequence, and timing. Standing at the edge of greater trials, he sensed that childhood lessons would soon demand application. The steps stretched endlessly forward, reflecting uncertainty and possibility alike, mirroring the unsettled but sharpening space within him. As responsibility pressed closer, he discovered that leadership often began quietly, through decisions made without witnesses, where choosing restraint over impulse slowly shaped how others evaluated reliability, competence, and calm under pressure. The need to gather allies emerged naturally, not as conquest, but as survival, because isolation offered clarity yet failed to provide protection when circumstances demanded coordinated effort and shared risk. He learned to speak less but more precisely, recognizing that words carried weight only when reinforced by consistency, and that authority grew strongest when others sensed fairness beneath firmness. Around him, alliances formed cautiously, guided by mutual benefit rather than sentiment, and he adapted by offering predictability, understanding that trust thrived where expectations remained clear and behavior stayed dependable. Internal tension followed, because the boy who once valued invisibility now had to accept visibility, along with judgment, comparison, and the quiet envy that accompanied rising influence. Rather than celebrating recognition, he treated it as responsibility, aware that attention magnified mistakes while reducing space for hesitation or retreat. As groups expanded, He noticed how fear moved faster than loyalty, prompting him to establish rules that felt stable even under stress, hoping order might outlast individual emotion. Those rules reflected hard experience, rewarding commitment and punishing betrayal not with rage, but with clarity, because ambiguity bred conflict while firmness preserved cohesion. He felt moments of loneliness sharpen again, since leadership created distance, separating him from shared vulnerability even as it offered purpose. Still, humor flickered faintly in his observations, as he noted how people who demanded dominance often crumbled when forced into accountability. Conflict intensified his inner dialogue, challenging whether compassion weakened authority or strengthened it through loyalty earned rather than demanded. Through repetition, he learned that mercy, when predictable, increased trust, while randomness bred fear that undermined cooperation. As seasons changed, his thinking widened, no longer focused solely on immediate survival, but on continuity across time, people, and place. He imagined systems where skill outweighed birth, and where loyalty flowed both directions, binding leader and follower through obligation rather than intimidation. Such ideas matured slowly, shaped by setbacks that exposed flaws, forcing revision rather than abandonment of principles. He accepted criticism selectively, filtering insight from noise, refining judgment without surrendering resolve. Crowds now listened when he spoke, and he felt the weight of expectation settle, steady and unyielding, demanding decisions even when outcomes remained uncertain. Authority tested his restraint daily, tempting impulsive displays of power that promised quick results yet threatened long-term cohesion. He resisted those impulses often, guided by memory of instability and the cost of fractured trust. Strategy replaced reaction, turning challenges into measured steps rather than chaotic struggle. He observed how discipline created freedom, allowing groups to move confidently within shared boundaries. Still, doubt lingered privately, questioning whether order could truly resist human ambition and fear. That doubt sharpened his vigilance, preventing complacency and encouraging adaptation as circumstances evolved. The world grew louder, filled with voices seeking favor or advantage, and he learned discernment, recognizing sincerity through patterns rather than promises. His emotional range narrowed outwardly yet deepened inwardly, balancing resolve with awareness of consequence. Decisions carried human cost, and he did not ignore that weight, though he learned not to let it paralyze action. Responsibility transformed him, shaping patience into strategy and observation into leadership. As influence spread, he sensed history pulling gently forward, though he resisted defining destiny prematurely. Instead, he focused on structure, believing endurance mattered more than momentary triumph. His inner world stabilized around principles forged through loss, reflection, and necessity. Even as ambitions expanded, he remained grounded by memory of hunger and uncertainty. That grounding prevented arrogance while reinforcing determination. He noticed how success altered perception, turning former doubts into admiration without erasing skepticism entirely. Leadership demanded adaptation, requiring constant negotiation between strength and flexibility. He balanced tradition with innovation, retaining useful customs while discarding those that hindered unity. This step remained constant, reminding him of humility and scale. Under its vast sky, plans grew ambitious yet disciplined. He accepted that control was never absolute, only managed temporarily through vigilance and trust. This acceptance strengthened resolve rather than weakening it. As challenges multiplied, his confidence rested less on victory and more on process. He valued preparedness over chance, cohesion over display. Those around him sensed reliability, drawing closer through mutual reliance. Purpose replaced uncertainty, though questions persisted quietly. He remained alert to vulnerability, knowing stability invited testing. His story widened without conclusion, still unfolding through choice and consequence. Standing amid gathered followers, he understood that leadership had reshaped him irrevocably. The boy of observation had become a figure of direction, yet introspection remained intact. With that balance, the next chapter approached, demanding expansion beyond survival alone.